Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's Standards Committee meeting. I'm starting according to the time on my laptop rather than the time up there, which is a bit slow. Thank you for venturing out in such terrible weather conditions, and apologies to those that weren't able to get in the car park and had a long walk from parking their cars. Hopefully that's been resolved now. So first of all, we have apologies. Can I ask you?
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Just the one apology from Councillor Filer. I haven't heard from Councillor Stribley, so she may be arriving shortly. And apologies from the independent persons, Mr. Cashmore and Mr. Story.
Thank you.
Chairman, can I just add, I've had an apology from Councillor Lisa Lewis, although she's not a member of this committee. She wanted to apologise for not attending when you're considering the outcome of the complaint and investigation into her. She's had a bereavement and had to travel away to look after her grandchildren, their family bereavement, so she apologises tonight, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members of the panel have any declarations they wish to make? Confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting of the 9th of July. They have been circulated. Are members happy that they are a true and accurate record? If so, can they indicate, please? Thank you very much. I'll sign those at the end. Okay. Item 4. Bob, I believe you're leading on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. As item 4 is public issues, we've received one statement from a member of the public. Mr. Olabi, if you'd like to step forward and read out the statement. Statement has been also tabled for members this evening.
Thank you, Committee. After a period of spanning 2 years and following 2 Ombudsman rulings, BCP Council has admitted to serious failings in the process regarding my complaint against Councillor Mike Green. Whilst this is to be welcomed, 2 matters remain of great concern. 1, that no one is to be held accountable for these failings. And 2, that yet again, the new investigation has failed to address the key fact that I was misquoted a number of times. I am thus left doubting whether anything of substance has actually changed, despite promises to the contrary. And I'm waiting for my copy of the independent review. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Luby. Right, item 5, consideration of report in respect of complaint about a councillor. I believe, Mr. Jones, you're leading on this one, or is it? Oh, sorry, Tom. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. And just for Councillor Stribley's benefit, we've had apologies from Councillor Lewis, who's had to go away to look after her grandchildren following a family bereavement. And Councillor Farquhar is here to speak on her behalf if you have any questions or if she wanted to make a statement, if that's acceptable to the committee. This report sets out the outcome and appends the formal investigation report following a complaint or a number of complaints received relating to Councillor Lisa Lewis. Members will be familiar with the context and the circumstances, and Councillor Lewis has indeed made a statement to full council, and the matter has been reported in the press. The investigation was conducted prior to Christmas, so at the end of 2019, and the independent investigator's report is, as I've said, appended. The outcome of that investigation is that the investigator finds the tweets that were made by Councillor Lewis and about which she has commented were made from a private Twitter account, and that there was no use of that Twitter account for any official council business or any other business relating to her position as a ward councillor or representative. On that basis, and bearing in mind the statutory framework applying in these cases, the Code of Conduct is therefore not engaged in this case, and he finds accordingly. I won't go into the report or the investigation any further because I think it is self-explanatory, but I will be able to answer questions of procedure and the legal context. And it may be, Chairman, that you wish to hear from Councillor Farquhar on Councillor Lewis's behalf.
Councillor Farquhar, would you like to come to the table? Thank you.
Sorry, I'm quite happy to answer any questions, etc. Or if you'd like me to make a brief statement, I'll take your guidance.
I'm happy to listen to whatever Councillor Lewis has asked you to put forward in her on her behalf.
Certainly, it's a sincere apologies that she couldn't attend this committee here. She's hoping that this evening will bring this matter to a close. It's been a great trial upon her in her personal capacity and in her ability to fulfil the duties as a councillor. So she's hoping that the committee will view the report from the independent investigator and make an appropriate decision.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not so much a question, really, just some reflections and comments. I think first and foremost, it's a very comprehensive report. I've read it through a number of times. In terms of the conclusion about Councillor Lewis not acting in an official capacity when making tweets concerning the article on Dorset Eye, I'm happy to accept. The only thing I would say, I think from a councillor perspective, I think it's incumbent on all of us to be very careful to what we put on social media. I've got two social media accounts. One is my Twitter account where I'm clearly identified as a councillor, and I've also got a Facebook account where I'm not. Having said that, I'm very, very careful what I put on my Facebook account, and I think it's incumbent on all of us, particularly given the training that we've had in recent months, to really think before we post, retweet. But in terms of this report, I'm happy to accept the conclusion of the investigator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Echoing what Councillor Jones just said, I think that we've had a number of new councillors, people who've never been councillors before, people who've perhaps not even thought about Facebook or Twitter, who perhaps have gone down that path because other people are doing it. And I know that as councillors we've had a couple of training sessions, not a full turnout by any means, of councillors who came along to listen to what was advice and tips that were given to us. And I think it is something which all councillors need to be more aware of. I've got a Twitter account, no intention of doing a Twitter account. I've got a private Facebook account, and it is a situation whereby we've read the report that she said she retweeted something without reading what she was retweeting. Well, yes, buried at the bottom, and this has happened to other people in other walks of life, there is some nasty comments that are being said, and people have been indicted on the basis that they are supporting it. Councillor Lewis has, at full council, made an apology. She has recognised that she made a mistake. I think that is something that is she is to be commended about, that she knows that she's made a mistake and she's learnt her lesson. And I think, echoing what the report says, I think we need to sort of move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. My apologies for coming in a moment or two late. I think you started very promptly. I agree with what my two colleagues have said regarding Councillor. She did apologise. However, and I accept the report in that technically it wasn't a councillor Twitter account, but we are all public figures, and I think perhaps there should be a recommendation to full council, or perhaps a warning to all members, that literally when you put your name out there, when you publish a comment which would be perceived by a number of people to be offensive, you are responsible for it, and I really don't care whether it's on a private account or not, because the name is known. You're not Joe Bloggs, from backstreet nowhere. You have canvassed for and been elected to this authority, and your name is certainly therefore very well known in this area. I entirely accept on this occasion both the apology and the findings, but I think in general I don't know what the best recommendation is that the Standards Committee could put to Council, not pertaining to any individual, but for the, if you like, the future conduct of all members. Because I do think anything that we put out on Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else, even a letter to the Echo, if you only put your name on it and not councillor in front of it, you can't really claim you're not being a councillor. You are a councillor, and your name is recognised as such.
Thank you. Yes, I take the point that was made earlier that we have had some training sessions, but it was very unfortunate that not many members of council turned up. I may be a little old-fashioned, but I have nothing to do with any media accounts, and that's the only safe way, basically, because as we've seen in the press and on television, a comment that you may have made on Twitter or Facebook 10 years ago can come back and haunt you. It doesn't have to have been yesterday or last week. It's something you said when you were at college or university, because there are people out there that troll through these things to try and dig up trouble on people, especially if you're in the public sector. So, yes, the advice is think before you touch that button. But as I say, it was disappointing that not more people from the council turned up at those training sessions.
With respect, Chairman, that's my point. Perhaps the Standards Committee should make a strong recommendation to Council. I mean, it was an invitation to have that training. Whether that training should be mandatory or not, I don't know. I don't know what powers this committee has, or if a strong recommendation is sufficient.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just prior to the last full council meeting, which seems ages ago, last year, we did have a training session on some particular aspect which was important to councillors, and there was a very good turnout for that, because it was just before full council, and I'm not saying do it in the February one, but perhaps the March full council meeting, there could be, in the 45 minutes or half an hour before the 7 o'clock start of the full council meeting, something to do along the lines of what not to do, what to do on Twitter and Facebook. In other words, a repeat of that seminar that was conducted where, as I say, a very poor turnout occurred. Thank you.
I was just going to say, Chairman, that in terms of that proposal, we could certainly, as officers, enable that to happen. We can set that up. So if you were to recommend, as a committee, very strongly that all members should attend that briefing session, we could set that up and we could email that out to all members on your behalf, Chairman, on behalf of the committee, to try and encourage that attendance, and we can make those arrangements.
Yeah, just picking up on the point that my colleague Councillor Strudi made, I think due to the seriousness of this, and clearly it's an area where you can go wrong very, very easily, I think the training should be mandatory as with obviously other courses that we've had thus far and will have in the future. So I think we really need to make sure that members are 100% clear on what they can and can't do in this area.
Thank you, Chairman, councillors, and independent member. This report is actually for information at this stage in terms of the recommendation. This is bringing forward to you a summary of and an update on the complaints that we've received since the 1st of April. It is as at, I think, around the 31st of December when the report was finalised. So any changes or any decisions that you may have made as a panel are not reflected in this report. But the intention is that this report will be presented to all future meetings and updated in terms of those that are pending to give you some basis of statistical reports. The details of the allegations of the complaints are set out in the table in section 6. It's a summary. It is only a summary. It is redacted to remove names of individuals, but it's to give you a reminder of the subjects of the complaints that we've had and the outcomes and the decisions you've reached. It then also gives a status of those that are still pending or closed. In terms of, you touched on already, Chairman and members, in terms of one of the outcomes, though, you have identified training needs that we've delivered. Social media is the main one that has run through a number of the complaints, and we've delivered that, and clearly we'll take your decision from your previous item forward. But I think it's important that we do learn from the complaints and actually try and deliver and focus on delivery of further training. A full report will come to your next meeting in terms of the training that we have delivered. We will give numbers about attendance at those sessions where we know the items, and you may wish to reflect at that point any other training sessions that you feel should be rerun or focused on as a priority. So the report is for information at this point, but happy to answer any questions, although clearly all members were involved in the complaints as they went through the process.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, in terms of this report and the different complaints, I mean, clearly it's important that each complaint is looked at thoroughly, but in terms of the pending ones, do we have a time frame for them? Because clearly they need to be dealt with in a timely manner, as well as obviously being thoroughly investigated and the right conclusions reached.
I think in terms of a timeline, putting a tight timeline, I think doesn't necessarily reflect the importance of actually dealing with it properly. But clearly we want to deal with complaints in a timely manner. So clearly we've had a learning curve in terms of the start. I think in terms of new complaints, and as long as they don't fall over holiday periods, Christmas and so on, that they are, again, Colleen might be able to help with some of the timelines actually, but acknowledged within 5 days. We then seek the views of the councillors complained about, and we give, I think, 5 days for those. We will then convene the meeting and give members at least 5 days notice of that, so you have full details of the complaint, so you can fully analyse the information, and then we will schedule the meeting facilitated by the chairman to listen to the views and then get a response out within usually a week after that. Some of them have taken a little bit longer than that due to the nature, but that's the sort of timeline, so a month or so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On following up on what Councillor Jones has just said, we've got, I think it's the penultimate on the bottom of page 49, complaint number 16. Do you know any timescale when the independent person will be reporting on that one, and thus we can be considering that?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This is the one that's been referred for formal investigation. Yeah, we are commissioning the independent investigator that considered Councillor Lewis's complaint. He's been instructed, and he will be then proceeding with that investigation, hopefully fairly quickly. And so we'd like to get that resolved, if we can, within the next 4 weeks, so that it can come back to you. But clearly that does depend upon the availability of the complainants and then the availability of the member concerned. But we would like to push that through fairly quickly for you.
Again, thank you, Chairman, members. This report comes back to you, actually. This came to your last meeting and you deferred it. It was to provide a flow chart that provides guidance to members whilst in meetings. You referred it back for a number of reasons, but you wanted to hold a further review, and we held a workshop with councillors, and I believe this version now reflects that. Some of the key issues there were around the Nolan principles being included, and in terms of the other interests, the local interests to be included, and we've also added the personal interest in a matter as well in terms of bias and predetermination. I believe this now reflects what members were feeding back during that workshop, but again, the intention of this is to include it on the agenda front pages for every meeting as a reminder and a guide to members. So if they are in a meeting and they suddenly realise they may have an interest, they can refer to this guide to help them. Part of that reason was to remove that, if you like, not the pressure, I was going to say, but the request on the Democratic Services Officer present to give guidance to members when actually the facts are known to the member. And so hopefully this flowchart will help members determine whether or not they've got an interest to declare and whether they should participate in the meeting. So again, we're asking for your support to this flowchart to be included on all future agendas.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the flowchart is very useful, and I've sort of got pretty used to declarations over the years. My one concern is item 2 on the agenda, where it says declarations of interest, because it asks, obviously we have to comply with the disclosable pecuniary interest, but then it's just asking if you've got a member of an external body. But sometimes members do have other personal interests, for instance on planning where you've been lobbied by applicants or objectors. You don't have any pecuniary interest in the declaration, but other members should appreciate that you have been lobbied or you have. And so I think that second paragraph perhaps should also highlight any significant personal interest should also be declared, something like that.
Chairman, if I may, we can clearly reflect that we will revise those standard paragraphs that appear on all agendas as well.
Sorry, Chairman, just to add to that, I think it might be helpful if we just simply said there, Councillor asked to declare any interest in accordance with the flowchart at the beginning of the agenda, because then we refer everybody back to it all the time and don't differentiate. That would really put some value on the flowchart as well.
I'll second that if it's proposed.
Yeah, just to say I'm fully supportive of this. It's much better than what we had originally. There's been a number of times in the past where I've had to send the monitoring officer emails inquiring whether I should disclose certain interests or others. So I think from my perspective, looking at this, somewhat it's easy to look at, simple to read, and obviously the key principles are there, so I'm fully supportive of this.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to say that I feel exactly the same as Councillor Jones, that this is really good now, what we've got in front of us. I don't think there's any way that it could be misinterpreted like with the previous version, and coming at it from I think I can still say new councillor's perspective, it's almost foolproof to follow this through, and if there are any questions then going straight to the monitoring officer. So yeah, I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think the flowchart's fine. Obviously, at the bottom it says if you've got any more queries, please contact the monitoring officer. Just one bit of fine-tuning that you could think about. Obviously, we're trying to get away from paper electronic. Where this appears on a screen, you can, I've seen it with other documents where an email address appears, actually click on it on the screen and instantly an email will come up on your screen and you can straight away type the query or comment that you want to do. It's a suggestion and it could help members, particularly, if they're in a panic and they need to raise something urgently with you. Thank you. When will this be implemented?
Within a couple of weeks. So obviously if agendas have been published or in the process of being produced, they won't be able to change this week, but hopefully by the end of next week we'll have it on all templates.
Sorry, I forgot to turn the microphone on. I think that actually concludes the meeting, unless there are any other issues the officers wish to raise at all. No. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It's a fairly quick meeting. I'm sorry you've got to venture out into that stormy weather again, but again, thank you for members of the public that attended and the press that had to venture out in the weather. Thank you. Thank you.